I'm here with Kasavin of Supergiant Games, who's the creative director of the fresh, hot off the presses announcement for Pyre. So we got a chance to check it out today, and I got to tell you, it's definitely a Supergiant game. It's got that charm, it's got those characters in it, it's got everything that makes a Supergiant game what it is and what it's become beloved to be. So, you know, we were talking for a minute about how, you know, the development cycle of this. This began right after production of Transistor, right?
Yeah, that's right. We started work on Pyre in July of 2014, which is just a few months after Transistor came out. We were kind of itching to start something new kind of right away and make a game in which you can interact with like a larger group. We wanted to do a game with an ensemble cast, essentially. Our previous games have been focused on kind of the story of a single character. And so it was very appealing to have this kind of ensemble, almost like a fantasy road trip vibe to this game, and what ideas quickly sprang forth from that.
Well, what I brought up from that is that you worked with kind of these duos, right? You always had like the human element with a narrator, or a human element with a sword, right? And now you finally have the chance, especially as like the main and only writer on the game, to work with a really fun cast of characters. Can you tell us a little bit about our cast a little bit there?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for me it's great because I get to write dialogue for the first time, to your point. It's our previous games are known for their kind of monologuing, but yeah, in this game you lead a band of exiles to freedom through this series of ancient competitions, and you meet some of these exiles early on. You're in this kind of mystical purgatory called the Downside, and you meet this kind of all sorts of different characters. So some somewhat recognizable and some rather unusual, and that was kind of a lot of the fun about it for us, is just meeting surprising characters, getting to know them, hopefully getting to make friends with them, and trying to see whether, you know, trying to help them see if they can achieve what they want, which is to be free for various reasons.
So you're telling a story through several different means of gameplay, right? Yeah. So we're meeting our characters, and I noticed that you're quickly given the title of a reader. So you have some interactive dialogue where you can learn through the dialogue, and then we also have like these camping. Between our rights, we'll get to that in a second, but between the rights you have these camping things where we're making decisions that'll affect how the story plays out. Like we can either go to forage, or we can learn more about the rights themselves that'll help us in combat, or however that may be. And then you have the rights themselves. How do they all really, like, how did you decide on all three of those elements to make them come together to tell the story of these people? Like, how did it fit for them? Yeah,
we really kind of wanted to simulate, kind of have a real sense of what it was like to be in this environment with these characters. So that meant it also was about kind of raising the stakes of these competitions. So we wanted there to be kind of an exciting lead up to these high stakes competitions that you then have to participate in. So that means like having to get there on time, you know, take the show on the road, and through this interacting with your characters and choosing how to navigate the space and choosing how to spend your time. And that was all about kind of feeling like you were living in this world, and all of that, all of what that entailed. So I said simulate before, but I mean that in kind of a in like a spiritual sense, to kind of get a feel for it, what kind of decisions you get to make. And to your earlier point, yeah, like what you bring to the table as a character in this world is your ability to read, something that sounds a little unusual and that the player, you know, takes for granted, but it's one of the aspects of this world that that you discover early on, is that literacy is forbidden here, and your ability to read makes you rather special, and makes you key to what these characters want. So it's one of the ways in which we're kind of playing with the format once again, where in a game in which reading is one of the ways in which you engage with the narrative, we wanted to make that feel significant here.
Now, I mentioned earlier that Supergiant charm, just playing through and going through the dialogue, and to make the game feel like you have agency everywhere, I was able to shave one of my companions' mustaches off, which was one of my favorite parts of the demo, just seeing how he responds to my feedback, you know? So it makes the game feel really personal, and it seems like that's the creative touch that you guys always have in your games. As for the rights themselves, which is the action portion of the game, I gotta tell you, it reminds me of, do you ever watch American Gladiators?
Yeah.
Like what? Yeah, you know, like am I far off? What was it?
No, I mean, people, it's funny, it's been cool at the show that This is the first American Gladiators reference I've heard, which is really exciting, but other people are like, oh, it's like rugby, or it's like basketball, or it's like soccer, and it's cool to hear all those different references, because we like, putting the player in a position where you can bring your own kind of real-world experience to bear. For the characters in this world, they don't have American Gladiators, so they don't know what any of this stuff is, but to the player, there are these aspects that are kind of may seem familiar in some respects, but it's it's all about the teamwork between these characters and having to outsmart and outmaneuver their adversaries, who of course also want to be free through this process. So that's part of what I was talking about, of making the stakes feel high, putting you up against characters who are kind of equally motivated to win as you are.
One last thing about the rights themselves, I found that when going through them, the player is looking from an outside perspective themselves, like you are the nameless player, right? And going into it, not knowing what to expect, especially since it was such a fresh announcement, I was surprised to see that it did not feel like combat. There's no killing. It felt like sport, and I think that captures the essence of, I guess, you've mentioned it earlier, like gladiator sports or sporting events in ancient times or something like that. It really has that heralding feeling. Yep. So, am I spot on where your influences come from?
So you touch on a really interesting and a really important topic from our perspective, which is that the non-lethal nature of these confrontations was really key to us, and the reason for that is that in many video games it's like, oh, it's a life or death struggle, it's high stakes, but it's not real, because when you die, when the monster crushes you or whatever, you just try again until you don't die, and then you go on. So in our game, it was really important to support the player who is defeated, who doesn't always win, and that's very key to some of the thematic substance of this game, that these characters won't necessarily always succeed, but then they have to pick themselves up and they have to talk through it. They bury their heads in their hands and wonder if they're ever going to be free again, but then they find ways to keep going, and so on. So in even what we're showing here at PAX, it's totally valid to lose in these matches, and the stories plays out a little bit differently if you do, and we want the player to feel comfortable that they're not always going to win here, because none of us in real life always win either.
So what's great about that too is you win and lose as a team, but either way you're building character with the three people that you're with, and I think that's really great, and that adds to, once again, the charm of Supergiant Games. Thank you so much for joining us today. Are we looking at a launch window yet? I know we just announced, but is there anything like that?
We have a wide launch window, which is 27. Yeah, we're just saying 2017, so next year sometime for PlayStation 4 and PC. Yep.
Thank you so much. 2017, Pyre. Check it out.